Imagine you are sitting in a classroom
Mm.
or, maybe a crowded meeting room at work. And the person right next to you has spoken like 15 times today, just completely dominating the airwaves.
Yeah, we've all been in that room.
Right. But you, on the other hand, you have only spoken 3 times. Well, according to the people actually evaluating you, you are the one winning the room.
It sounds so counterintuitive, I know. We just constantly confuse volume with value. You look
Huh.
around any group setting, and there is always that one person treating the discussion like a solo performance.
Oh, absolutely. Trying to get a word in every 2 minutes.
Exactly, and we just automatically assume they must be the smartest person there. But when you look at the actual mechanics of how engagement is evaluated, that approach usually backfires.
It is basically the difference between a sports highlight reel
Mm-hmm.
and actual consistent gameplay. Like the player trying to score a chaotic half-court buzzer beater every 5 minutes is not necessarily your most valuable player.
No, usually they're just exhausting to watch.
Right. So if you are listening to this right now, whether you are a student trying to participate more or maybe a professional prepping for a high-stakes team meeting today on the deep dive, we are decoding the actual secret to being heard.
And our source material today is really fascinating. It's a guide originally designed for students in the Danish Gymnasium system, which is essentially their version of high school.
And the Danish system provides this perfect laboratory for the topic, right?
Yeah.
Because of how they grade. They use this system of continuous assessment to determine what they call year grades, or ORS character.
Right, or character. The teacher is actually evaluating your academic level over the entire year through everyday participation. They aren't just handing you a final written test at the end of the semester and saying, good luck.
Which fundamentally changes the dynamic. If someone is watching you for an entire year, those flashy, constant interruptions get really exhausting.
They really do. And the guide makes it incredibly clear what teachers or even managers actually notice. It is a stark contrast to the myth of being the loudest.
It's about consistency.
Right. Exactly. It's about consistency. It's about moving the discussion forward, asking thoughtful questions, and showing preparation. A student who speaks 3 meaningful times in a lesson leaves a significantly better, more lasting impression than someone who speaks 15 times with absolutely no substance.
Which brings us to what the text calls the 3-contribution rule. This is arguably the highest return on investment strategy in the entire guide.
Oh, without a doubt. The goal here is to completely shift your mindset away from quantity. You aim for exactly 3 contributions per session, but they are broken down very strategically to show different levels of engagement.
So it's not just throwing 3 random thoughts into the void. It's calculated.
Very calculated. Contribution 1 is answering a factual question, something simple, like confirming a date or stating, the author uses irony here.
Just getting on the board.
Right. The purpose of this first contribution isn't to show genius. It is simply an easy confidence builder to get your voice into the room.
Getting on the board early makes the rest of the game easier.
Exactly. Then, contribution 2, you ask a clarification question.
Like what?
You might ask, can we also understand this from a historical perspective? Teachers and leaders appreciate this because it deepens the discussion without requiring you to have a profound answer yourself.
Oh, I like that. You are basically facilitating the group's learning.
Yes, exactly. And finally, contribution 3, you connect ideas. You say, well, this concept reminds me of what we covered in sociology last week.
That third one seems like the ultimate signal of higher-level thinking. You aren't just memorizing facts in a vacuum, you are building a web of knowledge.
It proves you're actually digesting the material.
And if you do the math on this strategy, the compound effect is wild. Just 3 comments a lesson is about 15 times a week.
Right.
Over a school year, that is 600 to 700 quality contributions. You are completely rewiring how that evaluator perceives you, not by being loud, but by hitting those 3 specific notes.
It creates a reliable pattern of engagement. But, to even get to those 3 contributions, the listener might be thinking about the biggest psychological hurdle.
Yeah, the fear of speaking up.
Exactly. The guide refers to this as the 20-second rule. Many people sit there waiting until they are 100% sure of their answer before they speak.
They want the perfect formulation.
Right. Confident participants, however, raise their hand when they are about 70% sure.
Wait, really? If I'm raising my hand and I'm only 70% sure, isn't that incredibly risky? I'd be terrified of giving a wrong answer and tanking my continuous assessment.
That 30% margin of error feels like a trap, doesn't it?
It totally does.
But that fear is exactly what paralyzes people. The text breaks down why this is actually a win-win scenario in a learning environment. Think about the psychology of the teacher.
Okay.
If you raise your hand at 7% certainty and you are wrong, the teacher corrects you and a dialogue happens. It proves you are actively wrestling with the material.
Ah, so the effort itself is the participation.
Yes, you are trying. And if you are right, well, the teacher remembers you as someone who contributes valuable insights. Waiting for absolute perfection dramatically reduces your overall participation.
You just end up sitting in silence.
Exactly. Agonizing over your phrasing, while someone else who is only 70% sure gets the credit for the exact answer you were too afraid to say out loud.
Perfection really is the enemy of participation. It sounds like there's a critical timing element to this, too, to overcome that initial paralysis. The text mentions a first-minute strategy.
Yeah, the guide strongly advises making that first contribution within the first 10 to 15 minutes of the lesson, even if it is just that factual confidence builder we talked about.
Just to get it out of the way.
Basically, yeah. By speaking early, you become mentally active for the rest of the class. It's about breaking the seal. Once you hear your own voice in the room, the psychological barrier to speaking a second or third time drops significantly.
That makes a lot of sense. But if we look at the reality of being in that room, knowing when to speak is only half the battle. If I take the leap, raise my hand at 70% certainty, the spotlight is suddenly on me. I need to know how to structure my words so I don't just panic, start rambling, and trail off.
Right, because the psychology of performing under pressure requires scaffolding. When you are nervous, your working memory shrinks. So the guide introduces a very simple system to keep your thoughts organized.
Let's hear it.
It's an acronym, the GOAL-LD formula. G-O-L-D.
Okay, walk us through how that actually sounds in practice.
So G stands for give an answer, even a really short one. If the discussion is about why a character in a novel lied, you just state your premise.
Like, I think she wanted to protect her mother.
Exactly. Then O, which is offer an explanation. This is the pivot point. You simply add the word because.
Ah, the magic word.
Yes. You say, I think she lied because she was afraid of disappointing everyone.
That one word, because, forces you to justify your thought. It takes a subjective opinion and turns it into a logical argument. It gives the teacher a clear breadcrumb trail of your thought process.
Which is exactly what evaluators are looking for. Then we move to L, which is link. You connect it to something else to show broader understanding.
Like saying, this reminds me of the psychological theory we read in Chapter 2.
Spot on. And finally, D is develop. Add an example, a piece of evidence, or a consequence. So instead of just saying wind energy is renewable, you develop it.
How so?
You say wind energy is renewable because it uses natural wind. However, production changes with the weather, so the country needs energy storage.
There is a similar tool in the text called the PREP method too, which operates on the same logic. Point, reason, example, point again.
Right.
You make your point, give your reason, drop an example, and restate the point. Using these acronyms is honestly like relying on a GPS for a conversation.
That's a perfect analogy.
When you are nervous, it is so easy to get lost in your own tangent. But if you have this underlying structure, knowing you have to hit the word because, and then an example, it forces you to keep driving toward a solid destination.
It turns a terrified 5-second mumble into a confident, structured academic answer. And all of this culminates in what the source calls the magical sentence.
Right, I remember this.
It's a structure that mirrors the scientific method in critical thinking. It goes, I think, followed by because, then for example, and finally, therefore.
So let me try that. I think democracy is stronger when more people vote.